This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this is the Lewis and Clark Olney-Wallooskee Planning Area Citizen Advisory Committee for January 28th, 2021. It is 6:02 p.m. So the meeting is called to order. I'm Julia Decker. I'm the planning manager for Clatsop County. I would love to have everyone introduce themselves, and so maybe I'll start by unmuting Commissioner Webb if I can, and ask her to say hello. There she is. Commissioner Webb, did you want to say hi?
I just want to say welcome, everybody, and thanks for all your hard work. And I'll be here to answer any questions or anything like that. I just wanted to remind you, however, that I can't access the chat box on my phone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm sure there's a code. I think sometimes it's like *6 or something. But otherwise, I'll just behave myself and try not to say much.
Okay, then I'm just going to leave you unmuted because I want you to be able to speak. So let's see.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. So Jim, did you want to introduce yourself? You're going to kind of be the experienced person here. So do you want to say hello and where you're from and what you're doing?
Hello, I'm Jim Nikas. Been here to all these, and I'm from here in Jeffers Gardens.
Okay, good evening. We have a couple of new folks. We have Tiffany Hall and Pat O'Grady, who are new appointees to the committee. Tiffany, did you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Hall. I live off of Lewis and Clark, and I'm excited to learn and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pat?
Yeah, this is Pat O'Grady, and I live out in Youngs River on Peter Johnson Road, out in that area.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining us. We have a guest this evening that's Carol Johansson, who has joined you for a number of meetings and typically has not introduced herself or spoken, but obviously we want to give her an option to do so if she would like. Carol, if you would like to join us, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay. And last but not least, Gail Henriksen.
Hi, Gail Henriksen. I'm the Community Development Director.
And so we've got our introductions going on and underway and done. So we'll go ahead and move through the agenda, which I think might go fairly quickly. It's not a long one this evening. I don't have any meeting summaries for you to review this evening, so I'm behind on those and I apologize, but we will, I will endeavor to get some of those done so that you have something to review so that you know what you've been doing. This is the part of the evening where we have public comment and input. Is there anybody who wanted to make anything in the way of a comment for the good of the order? Okay, well then in that case, let's dive into your agenda, which is review of Goal 5 topics on wilderness areas, natural areas, and open spaces. And so let's see. Ian and I actually took this one and divided it between us and provided you with some background materials on both of these topics. The first one was from Ian, and that was on open space, and he provided you with some definitions and some background. One of the things I thought was most interesting was, and I think it's about the second paragraph or so, the comprehensive plan identifies 3 types of open space within the county, potentially conflicting uses and methods used to protect open space from conflicting uses. That's on page 2 of your agenda packet. And so for open space, general open space, farm and forest land, estuarine resources, and Pacific Ocean and beaches, for example, the conflicting uses that are identified are intensive rural residential uses, commercial and industrial developments, filling and draining of estuarine areas, and protections for that are typically farm and forest zones with large minimum lot sizes and limited land uses, locational criteria for residential, commercial, and industrial uses, natural and conservation zoning for estuarine areas, and ocean beaches are regulated by the state of Oregon. So anyway, those conflicting uses, and then of course there's another set for site-specific resources and open spaces provided in conjunction with specific development, usually residential. So that kind of information was interesting, especially if we look down under open spaces provided in conjunction with specific, usually residential development. If you look at protections under there, you'll see policies that encourage cluster development and the retention of open space in residential developments. For example, subdivisions in the Clatsop Plains sub-area are required to have clustered lots in order to maintain open spaces. So that's going to play into some things that are going to be suggested a little bit later on here. So I just wanted to point those out right now. And then we have the natural areas. And that one was on me. I provided some background information. We have not a whole lot really. And I'll have a recommendation for you. I did also give you a link though to the Oregon Natural Areas Plan, their 2020 draft. So anybody who had a yen to read that, I hope you had an opportunity. Where I really wanted to go though was in the wilderness areas. We actually had more than I realized. I admit that I was not particularly aware of the Oregon Islands Wilderness, which is managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and that runs the length of the Oregon coast, and I didn't really think about that. And it's included the Tillamook Head Rocks, Bird Rocks, Sea Lion Rocks, Haystack Rock, of course, and then they added some later, which we'll want to make sure get listed in our comp plan. So I admit I learned something really interesting to me on that. So anyway, I won't spend much more of your time on that. I'd like to have you take a look at the Clatsop County Goal 5 Resource Inventory, which is I think about page 7 or so of your agenda packet. And Ian put this together. So we've actually got the I need to magnify that. I'm late in the evening here. My eyes are tired. I'm sorry. I'm not as young as I used to be. There we go. So the open spaces, Ian's got those listed out. The ecologically and scientifically significant natural areas include the Bradwood Cliffs, Walker Creek Old Growth Forest, and we had to actually go looking for some of these. David Douglas County Park, Onion Peak, I'm pretty sure most people know where that is, Sugarloaf, the Clutchie Creek Park, Saddle Mountain State Park, and Bradley and Oswald West State Park. So those are our natural areas, and you can see the planning areas that they're in. And we don't have any in the Lewis and Clark Olney-Wallooskee area. And then the wilderness description that we just talked about, the wilderness islands. So anyway, if you want to chat for a minute about this, do you have any questions or anything? Okay. How about you take a look at table 1, which is going to be the existing policies and goals that we have right now in the comp plan. And that table 1 there, that's it. That's what we have right now. We had suggested retaining them all. There was one we suggested deleting, and that was the one that reserved a 1/4 acre site on Onion Peak to be reserved for potential radio transmission facility. And I think it was Gail who spent quite a bit of time peering through all of the aerial photographs looking for anything and couldn't find anything. So now we know that the Nature Conservancy has an easement on Onion Peak to protect the subalpine forest at Meadow, and so anyway, we're recommending deleting that because it just doesn't make sense anymore to have it there. It's designated natural and it's actually protected. Gail, was it
Um,
you who went looking for it?
Yes, that's correct, Julia. I spent some time looking at it. I also contacted Katie Volke at the North Coast Land Conservancy, and she agreed that the policy could be deleted. So she was in favor of deleting it also.
Okay.
Hey, Julia?
Yes, Jim.
Yeah, the Onion Peak one used to be Air Call Northwest. That was a alternative to cell phones before we had cell phones in these areas. And they long, long ago been gone, but I knew the owner of it personally, and they used to have a little transmitting facility up there. But like I say, they're long gone. That's probably what that's from.
I am sure that you are exactly right. So it does sound like that probably is no longer necessary. Thank you.
Right. Okay.
Does anybody have anything here that they wanted to chat about or have questions about? And also, we're going to add that into the minutes because I didn't know that that's what that was, Jim. Thank you. No? Did you want to make any recommendations regarding staff's recommendations, or would you just prefer that we go with the staff recommendations, or what would you
Yeah,
like to do?
I think the staff recommendations are fine. That was just a little bit of useless information.
Okay, so we haven't been doing actual motions or anything like that. It's usually just kind of been consensus. So I see that Pat's got
No
something he'd
staff
like to say.
recommendation on that.
I'm sorry?
Staff recommendation on that, I would go with that.
Okay, Tiffany, did you have any considerations there?
I'm just processing everything right now.
Okay.
But it sounds fine with me. I just was wondering about Sugarloaf. Um, is that basically, because I know there's nothing current there, but it's private property. Is this basically so that it can be developed in the future?
Natural designation shall not affect the continued operating and maintenance of the radio transmitter facility located there.
Because it's not working right now. I mean, there is something there, but it's just not in service.
The site is essentially transmitting facility.
Yeah, so I know that maybe not on the state-owned part of Sugarloaf, but on the private property, there is an AT&T tower there, or Verizon, whatever they are today, and they just came in 2020 to do a co-location on that tower as well. So that tower is still active.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, if there's general consensus, then we can retain the policies or delete the policy number 3 if that's your consensus.
Oh, I'm good with your recommendation.
Okay. Okay. Well, in that case, let's take a look then at a couple of pages, which are the tables that are specific to the Lewis and Clark Olney-Wallooskee Community Plan, which have to do with your planning area. So no other committee is going to be looking at these. This is actually your area to look at and make recommendations about. So I wanted to check and see if anybody had any strong feelings about any of these, one way or the other.
So Julia, I might suggest that since we have 2 new members and this is really specific to their planning area, I know we've got 2 pages, but this might be one where maybe we want to go through them one by one and just
Okay.
kind of explain sort of what the Basaltic Highlands policies and how they relate to the local plan.
Okay, so yeah, we can do that. So basically, we're recommending that we retain the policy. The basaltic highlands should be designated as a resource unit, and uses other than woodlands, wildlife habitats, recreation, natural and mineral resources shall be discouraged. So basically, it would preserve them, and notice it's preserving them as mineral resources too. So that's the quarry mining, which is itself a resource that is protected. And so we don't want conflicting uses near the quarry mining area. So that policy, we've got like this spine of basalt, and Jim can probably speak to this better than I can, but we have like this spine of basalt that runs through the county kind of on a diagonal, kind of along Highway 202 actually. And So those are the highland areas above 202, above the Clatskanie.
And why do they want to discourage development?
Uses other than woodlands, wildlife habitat, recreation, and natural and mineral resources. So basically leaving that basaltic area freed up for wildlife habitat and or the quarry mining operations, which we have a number of.
Well, most of it's old forest land, but you're still talking about restricting forest dwellings. Is that what that reads? Um,
It says discouraged.
so that means what? That's a very broad statement.
It is. It's kind of broad. I'm going to guess that it doesn't mean that you can't do a template test dwelling or something like that. But as you know very well, doing a template test dwelling means that you have to jump through a bunch of hoops. It's not necessarily easy, and it's you have to meet a lot of conditions of approval. So um, it's not just go out and put in a subdivision in a forest land. It's
You
uh,
can't.
I'm sorry.
You can't. So that's kind of a
Right,
moot, isn't it?
right. So what I'm guessing is that when they say it, discouraged, it means rather than changing the zoning to something else that would permit a lot of housing, for example, because template test dwellings are already kind of difficult to do.
Right.
Yeah, and they're also permitted by state law, Jim, so we can't be more strict than the
Oh,
state
that's true.
law.
Yeah, that's true too.
The other concern on this is, and we brought this up in the earlier ones about the resource zones, about the mining zones. There are three rock pits that provide most of the rock for this area that are located there that aren't in mining resource zones. We only have one pit in the county that is actually in a mining overlay. So that's, I mean, of course you say that it doesn't affect that, but again, we should probably try to do something about these zonings of these existing pits that have been there for 50 years plus.
Well, so this policy would designate the basaltic highlands as a resource and discourage uses other than those listed, and those listed. So encourage means, that includes the mineral resources. So it would discourage uses other than those uses.
Yes, I understood that, but it's still,
Okay.
like I say, I still have a little bit of heartburn about our all of our rock pits not being in resource zones in this county. It's kind of bizarre to me, but that's a different subject. This policy right here, I do agree with.
Okay.
Could I ask Jim a question?
Of course.
Um, Jim, you just said that there are three major rock pits in the county?
No. There's three in this Highlands, in this actual, what we're talking about here. That's 202.
Oh,
It's
okay.
over
Okay.
Highlands. There's three
Good.
there. there's actually, there's actually probably 6 commercial rock pits in the county, and only one of them is actually in a mining resource zone.
And only one of them is what?
One of them is actually zoned as a what is the zone? Mining
Quarry and
resource?
mining.
Quarry and mining. There's actually one out of all of them that's actually in the proper zone. And why, and they were all there at the inception of the zones in 1980. And why they didn't do them, I have no idea.
I will say that they are mostly in agriculture, forestry, or F80 zones, which do permit aggregate mining.
Sure, sure, but it also talks about mining to use in forest zones and doesn't really actually say about commercial and commercial zones. And like I say, all of them, except for the one, are in forest zones. And I just, again, like I said it when we talked about it before, that I think that we should do something about these zones where these existing pits and historic pits have been.
Okay.
But I'm good with that, the policy.
Okay.
Ladies, I'm sorry, staff, could we kind of make a note of that, of Jim's comment about that, and make sure it's something that we deal with at some level?
Actually, because Jim has brought it up before, I think it is in our previous notes when we discussed quarries and mining initially. And also, I just actually did just make a note of it again.
Okay. I think that's an important consideration.
We did have that discussion and they didn't know it was written.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
No
no
problem.
worries.
Okay.
Okay. So Pat, Tiffany, did you have any questions or comments or anything you wanted to bring up regarding this policy?
I think you clarified it. It was confusing. The verbiage was confusing, but I think it's clear now.
Okay.
Just looking at the open space recreation area there when you get to that.
Oh, you're ready for the next section?
Yes.
Okay. So there we are. Open space, recreation, and preservation. Policy 2, the area around Youngs River Falls should be set aside as open space. The county and city shall work together to ensure that the area will be preserved for future generations to enjoy. And common open space should be encouraged along streams or as a buffer between uses. So that's basically all I could really find in that section. So staff's comment here is that Youngs River Falls is actually owned by the city of Astoria, and the county has zoned it RM, which is recreation management, which is intended for existing public and private parks, particularly those that contain significant natural values. And it is designated conservation other resources in the comp plan. And then on stream setbacks, we do currently have existing and stream setbacks currently exist, and they buffer streams from surrounding uses. And so I had wondered if cluster partitions and subdivisions might be, more appropriate in areas where there are a lot of streams. But anyway, staff's recommendation was just retaining both policies. Does anybody have any comments here?
I'm surprised the city of Astoria owns that property there. My only concern here has nothing to do with this. Why is the county taking care of it if the city of Astoria owns it?
I don't know that the county actually takes care of it. The county has it zoned because it's in a rural area outside city limits.
And the county does own the stuff on the northwest side, the parking lot, all that is actually owned by the county. The city of Astoria owns on the east, to the east and the other side of the falls, and probably the falls itself. that's probably about it. The county does own the parking lots and the area right down below the falls that you're probably used to calling the falls. The cities is on the east side.
Okay.
And for Tiffany and Pat, a few months ago, we had a different policy in the comp plan that talked about if the city of Astoria ever was going to build some sort of hydro plant at the falls, that there would be some sort of cooperation in how we would review the project. And I think that's probably why they own the falls, is because I think at one point they had aspirations to build some sort of hydroelectric plant out there. And that has pretty much gone by the wayside. Although they did say to us last year that if for some reason there was a regional need, that they might go back and look at that plan again. So maybe that explains a little bit more why the city's got ownership of that property.
Well, this is Commissioner Webb. The other issue related to this is that the city of Astoria owns the water rights to Youngs River.
Mhm.
And for my constituents along the Youngs River, that's a big deal. You know, we have a water district there, and in the Jeffers Gardens area, so this is kind of an issue. This is a real complicated issue, I think, right now, for two reasons. First of all, it's the water rights issue. Staff, have we talked about water rights issues in Oregon in any of our deliberations yet?
No, I don't believe so.
No, not really.
Yeah, because in Oregon, they are more complicated than any other state I have ever worked in. I think it's the old pioneer stuff, but so that's an issue. The other issue I wanted to bring up is having spent a couple of hours with our parks planning citizen advisory panel, is that has anybody ever thought that maybe we need to turn Youngs River Falls into a park?
I think people use it as a park. But it really has no amenities. But I think everybody, at least when I've been out there, I've always thought of it.
Isn't Youngs River Falls a park? It isn't? Maybe it isn't.
It is not.
Huh.
It is not.
Didn't know that.
And yeah, and it's one of the, well, I mean, it's one of the coolest places in Clatsop County. And so some people think that it would be a good idea to turn into a county park. But because of the land ownership issues, it, especially with the city of Astoria, it would be hard. But if somebody thinks we should do it, then we should do it. I just thought I'd float that.
Sorry, this is Tiffany Hall. I think that's interesting. And I really, when you get, to me, the first thing I thought of was water rights. I lived in Utah, so I'm very familiar with water rights and the South, the Central, the Mountain West and the Central, and Southwest, where that's big money. And so the fact that,
Yeah.
I could see that being an issue if droughts happen, or, with climate change, anything happening, how the city of Astoria could definitely want to access that if something happened to their other water supply.
Yeah.
But my concern with the making a park, I like the idea of making a park, but I also do know, and I've heard from other people that the amount of parks that we have in our county, or in even Astoria, that there isn't the funding to maintain them. So if it was to be made into a park, would there be the resources to maintain a park? That would be my concern.
Oh, that's an excellent concern. It really is. And My feeling is that the county has never exerted the kind of leadership that it should, because parks are a great economic asset to a tourism economy like ours, and there are some really exciting places in Clatsop County that we could, that we could think about enhancing. We've just never gone after the money or the resources before, I think.
My other concern with making it a park, since it is a watershed, when you do make it a park or make it more visible, then you have a higher possibility or of contamination of water, like more animals. I mean, there would have to be specific regulations put into place with access to it if it was going to
Yeah.
be trafficked, like no animals.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a
Well,
lot of different.
And sanitary facilities.
Yep.
And, the kind of infrastructure that could support park activity. That's always our issue. Do any of you feel that in the neighborhood of Young's Falls, we would get any kind of pushback about traffic or anything like that there? That is the quietest you guys have been in like a long time.
I would imagine there's already traffic impacts, even though there's nothing that's officially sanctioned there as a park. And Pat, you said you lived in that area. Do you have any thoughts about this?
I would leave it as is at this point, put it into a major park or something like that. There's already signs up for it, et cetera. I think I'd leave it as is at this point in time.
Okay, Ted. Thanks. That's
Okay, well, anything else, folks?
Nope, I'm good with it.
So Jim, am I hearing you say go ahead with retaining both policies?
Yes, because, one of the things about this is it's just the 11.3 acres that is owned by the city of Astoria, so it doesn't affect the whole thing anyway. So I think it's fine the way it's written.
Okay, Pat?
I would go with it as it is. It looks good.
Okay, Tiffany?
I can't see anything that's glaring at this moment. So,
Okay. Well, if something comes up, of course, we can always go back and discuss it again. But so for the moment, it looks like we'll go ahead with just supporting the staff recommendations at this point. The next one is conservation other resources. And this one is the county shall encourage identification, conservation, and protection of watersheds, fish and wildlife habitats, and areas of historical, cultural, and/or scientific importance. Forestry, recreational, and associated activities may be reviewed and restricted when such activities are found to be in conflict with conservation and protection of such areas. So this policy, it covers a lot of things. I almost didn't put it in because it covers things that you've discussed in other sections. But I went ahead and included it. Your previous discussions, you determined you wanted to retain elements that related to this policy, and that was staff's recommendation. So anyway, it's duplicated here basically for informational purposes and because of its relationship to the policies that are going to appear below. But I did want to have you take a look at it again because we're going to take a look at the natural policy below that. So anyway, you had supported that in the past, but then we have the natural policy. Or set of policies. And this is a little bit different because we don't really have policies, we have an objective. So I threw the definition in there. A natural area is defined as land and or water units to which natural resources exist relatively undisturbed and can be restored to a nearly natural state. Natural areas include native terrestrial, freshwater or marine ecosystems, for example, salt marsh or stand of old growth, areas containing significant biological, and that should be geological, hydrological, paleontological, archaeological, or scientific, or pardon me, scenic features, for example, a fossil bed or a waterfall. And areas particularly valuable for plants and wildlife, habitats for rare, endangered, peripheral, endemic, or otherwise unique species, exceptionally productive or diverse habitat, a vanishing habitat, habitat crucial to a stage in a species lifestyle, for example, spawning grounds or wetlands along flyways. So anyway, the objective that's in the policy, or that's in this comp plan says, the objective is to preserve, restore, and protect these areas for scientific research and educational needs, and for the resources and ecosystem support values and functions that they provide. So we don't have any goals or policies, we just have this objective. So I was wondering if the committee would like to devise a policy or policies to support natural areas. And so I had put a section in on the next table, which has to do with recommended policies. The one thing I did recommend was revising the language in there grammatically so that we had the parallel construction. But other than that, I would, unless do you have any questions here, or would you like to look now at the language that we were talking about recommending for you?
I have one little concern on this. I mean,
Yes.
I agree with all these policies and everything else, but as you're probably working on Daniel Sturgill's natural aquatic zones that are wrong and are not where they're supposed to be, some kind of a avenue to be able to correct these when they're proven that they're not the habitats and, crucial habitats or wetlands or stuff like that.
Okay.
Or is that just something that you look at for any kind of a zone change? Just because, I mean, anything that comes to me that's called aquatic or natural or whatever seems to me to be written more in stone than it is to correct obvious problems somewhere else. I don't know, am I making myself clear, or do you understand what I'm saying, or?
So what you're looking at, you're saying you want there to be some sort of way to review and make sure that the areas actually should have the designation that they have?
Correct. I agree totally with the uh, written written policies and what they call out. But like I say, and as we very well know, we have these lines that were kind of just drawn in certain areas where some of them it impacts a non-aquatic zone that is very difficult to get changed or to prove that it isn't, which obviously you need to prove it. But, there's, like I say, I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel Sturgill's. I think you're working on it right now, where he has a property that he's had delineated and everything else. And part of it's in the natural aquatic zone, and it's been delineated and approved as uplands and everything else. So and there, like I say, I'd like to see some kind of a language in there that say, if you can prove it, it should be talked about being changed.
I would absolutely agree with that, Jim, because I'm working on Daniel Sturgill's property right now, and I mean, he's got the delineation. We just don't have a mechanism in the code that says we can, based on scientific evidence, move the zoning line. That's the part that we're missing.
And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Is the zoning map going to be updated, or do we have to use the current one that exists? Is that part of this process?
That is not part of this process. This process is updating the comprehensive plan, and it may lead to suggestions about corrections, but updating the zoning map is a whole different process, and it's a very large one. It depends on how many different types of changes are recommended. The other thing is updating a zoning map, changing the zoning on somebody's property, whether it's downzoned or upzoned, creates a Measure 49 situation that has to do with actual liability on the part of the county. So Measure 49 is pretty complex, and I wasn't actually thinking to discuss it this evening. But a zone change where the county implements it on another party, I would be surprised to see the county do that unless it is at the behest of the landowner. I don't know that we will ever again see zone changes where the county comes in and just does it. But if the landowner wants it done, if the landowner makes an application of some sort, then obviously the county would review it and work with the application.
And Julia, could you just briefly explain Measure 49 and a little bit of its history and what it means and why it came about?
Okay. I can, and then we'll have Jim correct me. So so let's see. Back in, I think it was about 2004-ish, the state of Oregon the voters approved Measure 37, and Measure 37 was a corrective because what has happened over the decades, land use planning was implemented starting in the 60s, and some people owned property that they could do things with back then that the zoning changed and disallowed some of the things that they could do. So they owned property that had, in a number of people's views, been devalued by the zoning. And so Measure 37 was seen as a way to correct that. And what it did was basically say, if you owned the property and the zone changed and now you couldn't do what you wanted to do with the property, you had a case for correction, for reimbursement in some form, and typically that was the person could make this claim and then, proving successful, could do with the property what it was that they could have done before. And the poster child for this was a woman named Dorothy English, who is over in the metro area with a very, very large farm that she wanted to divide into, I can't remember what size lots, but anyway, but it was, on the rolling hills above Portland. And so you can imagine the value there if that could be turned into a subdivision. And Mrs. English said if she had done it before the zoning was implemented, then she would have been able to. So anyway, the voters looked at that and recognized an inequity and approved Measure 37. So then there was some overreach with Measure 37. And some people were not happy with how long it took to get these things through. Other people were not happy with the way that it worked for a variety of reasons. And then we had a different poster child, and that was the city of Rimrock, I think, that had a family that lived above the Rimrock, or they didn't live above it, they had property above it. They had always wanted to build a house there, but the city had zoned it in such a way so that the skyline would never be changed, because that was part of the cultural identity of the city, was this beautiful skyline of this Rimrock. But this family wanted a house there. And so anyway, they filed a Measure 37 claim, and the city preferred to pay them off rather than allow the skyline to be changed. And they felt that they were not paid enough, so they came up with another claim. And they did this a number of times until finally, I don't know exactly how that all played out. I mean, they said, okay, fine, well, now we can't build homes there, but we want to put a casino up here, or we want to put a hotel up here. So they kept filing serial Measure 37 claims and getting the city to pay off. So anyway, I don't remember how that all played out, but there were a variety of these types of things around the state. And the legislature came up with a correction for that, and that was Measure 49. And so Measure 49, when it was approved by the voters, trumped 37. 37 went away. And if you'd had a Measure 37 claim that had been approved, you needed to file a Measure 49 claim with the state of Oregon. So the Measure 37 claims had all been handled by the counties and cities, and we in Clatsop County had 108 claims that we had to wade through. And it was extraordinary. I will tell you that. I was here for that. And I handled a bunch of them. Anyway, we made it through all of ours in the time limit that we had too, I might add. And then Measure 49 came along, and everybody who had a successful claim was supposed to file their Measure 49 claims. And some people did and some people did not, but that's a different story. Anyway, so now we have Measure 49, and if the county or a city comes through now and triggers something that is considered a taking, then removes somebody's right on their property, then it triggers this window, a 2-year window through Measure 49, where the property owner can file a claim for Measure 49 reimbursement of some sort. So, Jim, go ahead and correct me.
No, that was pretty damn good, except for 49 was too overreaching within itself. That took guys like poor Gary Osmo, and they had the percentage of what you had to have completed by a certain date, and then it came up to some arbitrary bunch of people to determine what was a considerable amount and what wasn't. So, yeah.
Right. The whole vesting issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was, I didn't go into any detail on that, but yeah, there was a vesting issue. People who had made their 49 claims, they ended up having a streamlined version where you could get like 3 houses if you just agreed to, I guess, sign off and go away. You could get the streamlined version.
They gave it to you.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
If you did what they wanted and followed their thing, they gave it to you. If you wanted anything outside of their little crumbs that they gave you, it turned into a fiasco of years and years of litigation. But anyway, we can talk about this all night.
Well, that's true. But anyway, so that's down and dirty. That's Measure 37, Measure 49. The state of Oregon has a Measure 49 website that has a tremendous amount of detailed information, as well as a list of every single claim that is authorized in the state of Oregon. And you can look it up by county, and you can see the list of the Clatsop County claims and their authorizations as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Julia. That was wonderful.
Oh, yes, you're welcome.
Whoa.
I say more.
So anyway, back to the natural areas.
And Jim's not talking about quarries anymore.
No.
Well, yeah, but he could go back to
I got a few of the little crumbs, but I only could get crumbs. They wouldn't give me anything good. Anyway.
So anyway, where were we with the natural areas?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so Jim had thought he was pretty good, except that we don't have them accurately labeled. Is that what I understood? Where we left off?
Yes, like I said, it's just I actually have one, but it's neither here nor there, and it's we know that it's at a state level that's very complicated to correct, and I don't, and the state doesn't have anything that makes it easy, but it sure would be nice to at least have a policy that says, look into it or something.
So maybe a mechanism, I think, Gail, that was your term, a mechanism to for review.
Yeah, we need a mechanism that would allow us, when someone has an approved state delineation, to come in and be able to move that zoning line based on that delineation.
Okay.
Well, obviously you talked to the state about this. What do they say?
I don't think I've talked to the state.
You haven't asked them? You haven't asked?
Well, I talked to Dan Carey actually.
Oh, God.
Actually,
No, just say no.
he was very supportive. He thought that the county should just be able to move that zoning line based on that delineation. And I agree, it makes absolute sense. I mean, the gentleman's got the scientifically backed ground proof that this is where the zoning line should be drawn, but because the zoning line was drawn by an ordinance that was approved by the Board of Commissioners, I just don't have the ability to go to the zoning map and erase it and move it over, which is, you know, the issue. So
We could talk about split zones for 2 hours, but that's got nothing to do with natural resources.
So I guess my question, this is Tiffany. I guess my question is to address this concern that you guys have been talking about, would we need to make a recommendation or whatever? What information would we need to be able to make those delineate to change that? Like, would you need what kind of scientific information and how do they prove that? Because I think that's basically how do they prove that and what are the requirements to prove that?
yeah, so for example, Tiffany, the gentleman that Jim was talking about, Mr. Sturgill, he's got some property out on Clatsop Plains, and we've zoned his property. Part of it is zoned for residential development, part of it is zoned lake and wetlands. And the lake and wetland zone is based on a 1982 study that the county did when we were working on the original comp plan, and a hand-drawn, hand-colored map. Obviously, there was not any type of digitization back at that point in time. So the gentleman now has bought the property. He's actually paid a wetlands biologist or some other professional to go out and delineate where the actual wetlands are on the ground based on vegetation and soil types. He sent that study to Department of State Lands that has jurisdiction over the wetlands in the state, and they reviewed it, and I think they've also been out to the property, and they have signed off agreeing with his biologist's opinion. So he's got a document that's good for 5 years that says, you know, based upon vegetation, soil types, and whatever other attributes that they may look at to delineate a wetland, that we agree this is the actual boundary of the wetland. And so instead of our generalized green color on the map, it really should be updated to be more specific and accurate and actually show where that boundary is. But that would be the scientific evidence that we would be looking for in the case of a wetland like this.
I would agree that would be appropriate.
Oh, thank you, Tiffany. I love you. One of my greatest, this is Commissioner Webb, one of my greatest concerns is that we are in an environment which, of course, is changing dramatically in terms of our geography, and that things that were mapped out 40 years ago are often just plain not relevant. And I've been kind of campaigning for us to spend some money to do a better job of demarcating wetlands and tsunami zone. Well, I think we've done a good job with that, but we've got to know. I mean, a property owner has to know. I think this is a terrible burden to put on somebody who buys property where there's no, well, we went through a thing a few years ago where we should let them know that they're in a floodplain or a tsunami zone. And I do believe in that. But we don't know, you know, without the science, without the maps, without really understanding what the facts are, we're putting an enormous onus on landowners. If we can't, you know, if we can't, guarantee isn't the right word probably because our land is changing so quickly, but we need more good scientific reliable studies. Yeah, to help our landowners know what they're dealing with. I think that's just a.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I do know that I mean, with this, I want to preface that with the way the weather changes and 100-year floods and things like that, you know, in my undergrad, that's what I studied, was that kind of stuff. And I'm not working in that field at all, so I haven't really spent, like, the last 20 years, I haven't done anything on it. But I also do know that things change and that there is still potential for like 100-year floods, and with the change in our environment, that there's also, I don't know, if we are going to make a change, I think that it would probably be wise to have, if, like, let's just say if somebody was going to be developing something that would have been considered lowlands or wetlands, that that you may have two proofs of scientific evidence and not just from one person, that you could potentially pay off to say something that you want to have happen, and then you have a whole bunch of people move into a subdivision that they think is safe and it's not.
Right.
So that would be my only concern, is somebody wanting to make a buck, which I totally understand and I get that if you have land. But I also think that the due diligence that people who would, you know, you are expected to do diligence when you buy property, but I think that there also needs to be, as a county and that we need to also protect people who in the future may be buying land. And if we go and say, yeah, that is no longer wetland, and then something happens and it floods, and then an entire community, like a neighborhood, loses their homes. I mean, I just would want to make sure that there would be something in there that would say that we wouldn't just take the word of one person, that there could be, but I also do know that there's expense. I mean, I understand the financial piece in that, and that, so I'm kind of torn, but I also feel like that there needs to be some checks and balances in there with a decision like that. That's all I'm going to say, I guess.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. But unfortunately, it's expensive to do all that. You know, to do all of those studies.
I mean, I can sit here and we can argue this point all night long too, which is totally out of what we're doing here. Is the problem with Clatsop County is over 90% of the buildable grounds in Clatsop County is either in a wetland, a tsunami zone, or a geohazard, or whatever. And all the good places where people should build up and out of this Jeffers Gardens and there and along the creeks and rivers and everything else are unfortunately resource zones. But we all know that, so I'll not argue that.
I totally hear you, Jim. I get it.
So Gail has added, and I'm basically saying this for Commissioner Webb and anybody who can't read the green on the screen here, need a mechanism to be able to relocate zoning lines based on ground truth evidence, such as delineations. So she is adding that as this committee's recommendation. Do I hear agreement from you on that?
That's perfect for me.
Okay. Tiffany and Pat?
Go with it.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, Gail will probably highlight that and then we'll take it over to the next page, I'm guessing, and take a look at the things that staff was recommending, and we'll put your recommendations in there as well. So this is on the proposed policies. And so we put some issues in here for you to think about, some comments of things that we noticed, but we're going to put yours in here too. So anyway, so staff had some ideas. The first one, Ian was looking at recommending or requiring subdivisions be clustered countywide, not just on the Clatsop Plains. Currently, it is a requirement on the Clatsop Plains, and he was recommending that it be done countywide. And if you took a look at your packet, you would have seen that there's an explanation of cluster subdivisioning and how it works there toward the end of it. So that was something that he had recommended. Did anybody want to talk about that? Jim, you might have some ideas. Pat, how about you?
Well, I'm trying to get a little more information on that. I'm not so sure at this point in time we want to switch the county over to that complete issue there at this point. We need to look into that a little more, in my opinion.
Okay. Jim, did you have an opinion?
I think that's probably good because I am a true believer in clusters. So, yeah, good.
Okay. Tiffany, are you familiar with the concept of cluster divisioning?
I was just trying to find that right now.
Okay, let me
I just found the page.
okay. So yeah, it's toward the end there. But there's actually a drawing on about oh, what page is this? I've lost track.
I found it.
There it is. There's actually a drawing that shows cluster divisioning, and it is page 35. Yeah. So with density transfer and cluster development, which is what Ian is recommending, you get more open space for people to enjoy and that can be used as wildlife habitat and natural space. And you get more aesthetically pleasing neighborhoods. So the one on the left is got 40 houses, each on their own 1 acre plot, spaced out the way they are. You can see the tremendous use of resource for asphalt and utilities and that, and plus everybody's, it's a cookie cutter type thing. And we see these in a lot of places. Where I've seen them actually kind of a lot is in the Southwest. Maybe Tiffany,
Yeah.
you've seen them there.
Oh yeah, this looks like where I lived. Yeah.
And then with density transfer and cluster development, the one on the right shows you more what you would end up with if you initiated that or recommended that and it was approved as something to use countywide. And so there aren't as many houses there. I will tell you that. That's not 40 houses, that's 32. So it's 8 fewer houses. But you might also look at it and say, but probably aesthetically those lots are worth more than the individually than the 40 individually are over on the other side. Everybody still has a neighbor on each side, just as they do over there. They're around a courtyard, the utilities and the pavement, there's a lot less stringing things together, and so you don't spend as much money, frankly, on utilities and pavement and things like that. And then you have all of this where you're seeing the sort of the colored area there. That's the natural area. That might be wetland, it might be forest land, but everybody's got a backyard that's got that in it. And typically it's owned communally by the subdivision or some the homeowners association or something like that. So that's what Ian is recommending as a possibility. And you could probably squeeze another 8 homes into that if you made each of those 5 around the cul-de-sac instead of 4. But anyway, I mean, I think the argument is going to be that those 32 lots are more valuable than those 40 lots over on the left. So that's what the concept is, just down and dirty. So anyway.
I like it.
Pat, what did you think?
I'm really not for it at this point in time with our area around here at Clatsop County. There's some areas that could really use that. There's some that it just will not work. So I don't think I would make it a recommendation to require to be clustered at this point. That's my opinion.
Okay. So kind of, I don't know how you want to do it. Do you want to not touch this or leave it, or how do you want to resolve that? Because Jim, you were kind of supported, maybe not at this time, might not be appropriate in all areas, is what Gail is typing. So maybe instead of
So,
require it, maybe just recommend it.
so if you're talking about this cluster with this and you're talking about the deficiency of the certain lots, is somebody proposing that we can density transfer them like down in the plains, or is just want that to be deficient?
Well, do you want to talk about density transfer?
No.
No.
I want to go home.
Well,
I mean,
I mean, I love clusters because they actually, like you say, they make, for the simple reason that they make your lots more aesthetically good and people want to live there versus being in these little groups of city types. But I would, the deficiency stuff bothers me, but I'm a developer, so yeah, that's just my thoughts.
okay. Well, we don't have to make a decision. Your recommendation may just be that it might not be appropriate for use in all areas of the county. Um,
I can
but
agree with that.
maybe we should make it
Yeah,
more obvious.
yeah, that's good, because if you do that on the plains, you can density transfer them, but if you're out here, you can't density transfer them.
Well,
But
that's
that's
why,
on the state level too. But anyway,
well, okay.
yeah,
All right. Well, then let's see. Moving on, the staff comment on the number 2 one was an open space acquisition program is a tool local governments can use to protect Goal 5 resources such as open space, wetlands, historic, and sites and scenic sites. Open space acquisition can also be used as a hazard mitigation tool. For example, land in a floodplain can be acquired and managed for flood storage. The staff recommendation, and I believe this came from Ian, is to encourage the development of open space acquisition program and identify potential and ongoing funding sources. And one note here was to make sure everybody understood the recommended program would be voluntary and opportunistic, and it would not be a use of eminent domain.
I can agree with that.
I like that one.
I can agree with that.
Okay, so agree with the staff recommendation on that? Okay.
Yes.
The number 3, at the time of Goal 5 adoption in 1979, several Clatsop County sites were added to the Oregon Islands Wilderness. The new sites are mentioned, but they are not shown as listed in the goal. This one is from me. Also, other sites may have been included in the interim. I don't think so, but anyway, it would be prudent to verify that all the sites that are supposed to be listed in the federal listing are included in the county's Goal 5 resources. And all I was recommending is that you recommend we verify that everything that should be listed is listed in the comp plan.
I agree.
Okay.
Let's go with it.
I
Okay.
agree too. Make sure
Thank
that
you.
it is listed correctly.
Yeah, it looks to me like they've mentioned everything, but it isn't actually listed. So anyway, if we need to update that, and I don't want that to get lost. Let's see, another one. There may be a benefit to identifying potential candidates for listing as natural areas to support state, federal, and local and private property owners' future goals, and to include scientific concepts related to natural areas to remain useful to state and federal land management planning. So basically, the idea here was to identify any natural areas not previously addressed in periodic review and maybe inventory significant areas for future consideration should property owners wish to participate. And once again, there might be something somewhere down the road where having property listed somewhere in the comp plan as having, you know, this beneficial use as a natural area might support somebody's desire to do something with their property or have it listed in such a way. But again, the participation would be completely at the property owner's desire, and they could opt out at any time.
Can
I
you
like that.
clarify what that means exactly? What you're referring to? How would this happen? I guess is what I'm saying.
So basically, what I was looking at was if there were any, you saw the list of natural areas earlier, and that included, in fact, Sugarloaf and Onion Peak and places like that. Were there any that we might want to include in a list, just as saying that they are significant in some fashion? Because sometimes having a property listed in such a way, somebody who owns the property then can turn around and use that as support for something that they're trying to do, some sort of management that they're applying for, or, you know, whatever. And I don't know 10, 15, 20 years from now what might happen, what might change, but there might be some reason that somebody might find it useful to say, look, see, my property is listed here. That was all I was thinking about.
So could you give me an example of a natural area that is not identified that may, so I
Well, that's what I
understand?
was coming to you guys for, was a list or anything that you might be aware of that we're not. You know, does somebody know of a fossil bed or something that might be worthy of preserving? Or that was what I was coming to you for. I don't have an example.
This
Young's
was
River
just a
Falls.
yeah.
Well, Young's River Falls is what you mentioned earlier. I was thinking of fossil beds myself, but anyway, that was an example.
Isn't this just to give a property owner that wants to put restrictions on their own property to be a mechanism to be able to, if it's a unique natural area, isn't that what that says? That's what it says to me.
It could definitely be used that way, yes.
Yeah, I totally agree with anything anybody wants to do, and like the Nature Conservancy would probably like to be able to do that to some of their sites, and I'm totally agree that anybody who has private property should be able to restrict their property anytime they want.
Well, for example, one that I was thinking of on the Clatsop Plains that you may or may not be aware of is the Butterfield Fen. And the fen is one of the largest in the state of Oregon, and it's unique, and I think it's the only one in Clatsop County, but it's one of the more significant ones, I think, in the West. It's absolutely beautiful. Nobody knows it's there. Well, I shouldn't say that. People do know it's there. But I was wondering about something like that, as something, it's owned by the Nature Conservancy mostly at this point, if it was something that would be useful to them to be able to list. So that was my example, but that's not in your planning area. That one's actually in the Clatsop Plains planning area.
So would this be used, so I'm just trying to think about how this would be used. So this could be used for like a private owner who wanted to set it up, or if it's, so let's say, like for instance, Onion Peak, which the North Coast Land Conservancy had just recently, right? They're doing that, the protected area for the rainforest. Would that help them acquire more land? I mean, I'm like that. I'm trying to look at it from two different perspectives. Would it be, are we looking to help people acquire more land because of something that has been designated, or are we like what? I'm like, because there's going to always be other uses besides one way. Like there could be another use for this land if we do something. What is the con, or I mean, not to say the con, but what is the other use of the land if we do designate something as a natural area? Is it going to inhibit, or is it going to prohibit? Or, I mean, like, what are the outcomes if we do that?
Well, the designation actually isn't a county designation. It's a federal one, if I recall correctly. But all that we would be doing is placing it on an inventory for consideration if somebody who owns the property comes along and wants to use it.
Okay. I hope I'm not talking too much. Sorry.
No, not at all.
No.
Isn't this is basically, you're just talking about having a deed restriction on the property if somebody wants to make it a natural area, so that if by some chance somebody else gets the property by whatever measure, whether, I can see like a elderly person that loves the property and wants it to remain the way it is, and putting a deed restriction. Let's say they have waterfalls or something and want to have a deed restriction to say that this should remain natural, and it can be considered as an important natural area, so that their heirs or something else can't screw with it. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Well, not even that, because anybody can place a deed restriction on their property. I mean, they don't need anything from us to do that. I was thinking that it might be more if they were trying to obtain some sort of support for using a property in a certain way, or setting it aside, or obtaining funding. I mean, like I said, I don't know what the next 15 or 20 years are going to bring. But yeah, anybody, I mean, you can deed restrict anything you'd like right now, and you don't need this to do it.
So, Julia, are you saying, like, if, let's just say if there was some kind of grant or funding that would be like offered federally, and if there was something specific to their property, if it had like a recommendation or a whatever this is that we're trying to do, they could use that therefore to apply for the grant or whatever. Is that, I mean, I'm trying to understand how it would be.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, is it's really just more of a support system for somebody if they want to do it, if they want to use it that way.
And like I say, I'm totally good with that, with the last part of that statement, as long as it's something that the private property owner wants to do. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, it would only be if people wanted to participate. It would not be against anybody's wishes. Again, zero eminent domain, absolutely zero. It would just be, do you want in? Okay. Do you want to delist? You don't want it on there anymore? That's fine too.
Okay, I was gonna say, could you, like, I would have to have that caveat on there that they could put it in or take it out.
Okay.
That's kind of what it says, because it says wish to participate. Sure.
It can be twisted around very easily.
Yeah, the problem, yeah, so what Gail is typing in is the program would need to be voluntary, and property owners could delist if requested.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. Oh, you're almost at the end here. Let's see. Need a mechanism to be able to relocate zoning lines based on ground truth evidence, such as delineations. That one is yours. So anyway, that had to do with basically the zoning may be based on old or inaccurate information. And so that one's yours. So you've already approved that. And then Gail had put in there that the city of Astoria has control of the water rights in Young's River. So that's listed as an issue. Do we have any kind of recommendation or comment or anything on that, or do you just kind of want to have that sitting there to think about?
Would the water rights be below the fall?
I don't know.
What was the question?
Are the water rights below the falls?
No.
That's my understanding, but I may be wrong.
My question would be, if they had the water rights, how much of the water rights? And because I know it's a percentage, and it wouldn't be unless they own all the water, but then that means nobody above the falls would have. I mean, there's specific laws on that, so I guess that would probably I don't know how that would affect the county. The county
This-
I know.
probably would want to know because if there is an explosion of, because we know that Astoria is not going to grow any larger than it is. If there is going to be any development, it's going to be in the county. And I think the
So,
county should probably have an idea of what resources they have based on the water rights.
see, one
Well,
of
let me tell you what the folks in Jeffers Gardens feel. They feel that the reason that Astoria is not relinquishing any of those water rights is because ultimately they want to extend their annexation into the Jeffers Gardens area. So their feeling, you know, I get it. I mean, Jeffers Gardens is, especially the water district there, which is very limited. It is at capacity. And a lot of it is and here we get back into floodplains. We're trying to relocate the Lewis and Clark fire district because it's all of that area south of one business is, well, it's floodplain. So it's the kind of thing I would love to see this group actually grapple with. I really would, because I think it's one of the places right now in our comp plan, that there are certain hot spots that are getting attention, and I think Jeffers Gardens is not getting enough attention. I think it's something that we need to grapple with, and be able to provide. You know, we have a lot of infrastructure there, so I'd love to see that. Uh-oh. I may have to sign off because my dog is getting, whoa. Okay, sweetie. I'm sorry. So that was my deal with that whole issue. You know, we have UGB issues that have to be dealt with as development continues to grow, and we have, yeah, we have all those things, and it all relates to water, not all, to water and disposal. That's it. Am I out?
We can hear you. So what Gail
Okay.
what Gail has typed is a question basically maybe for future consideration and research, which is what are the extent of the city's water rights?
And what are the
Mhm.
extent of the county's water rights? I think that would be another question. What is,
Absolutely.
because who owns those right? Because whoever owns those water rights is going to
Mhm.
have the power. I mean, if it's the city or if it's the logging industry or whoever it is that owns that water, who owns it?
Right now, the Young River Water District is taking the water out of that river, so are they gonna be cut off down the road, or what's going on here?
Yeah,
They
I
are
know.
almost at capacity.
the, the, the way it works is that you get so many cubic feet of water, and the Lewis and Clark Water District has X amount of cubic feet, and I used to know this, but I don't know it anymore. And they're, like she says, they're just about at their capacity. The problem and the argument with the city of Astoria is they have probably, I think it's about 50 to 100 times the cubic water feet that the Lewis and Clark has on that estuary. And the real problem with it is that their Bear Creek facility in Napa has 10 times the amount of water that the city of Astoria will ever use. And it's been a ongoing discussion, Betsy Johnson and everybody else, where the state, which the state actually owns the waters in Oregon, is talking about maybe taking some of that from the city of Astoria because they'll never need it. And like everybody's saying, it's more or less a bargaining chip for the city of Astoria. And of course, they don't want to give it up because, you know, and in the world today, water is power. So that's kind
That's right.
of a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Thank you. That's really right.
So Gail has augmented the sentence now. It says, what is, or the question, pardon me, what is the extent of the city's water rights? And what is the extent of the county's water rights? What about the water district? And how is it impacted? So these
Wonderful.
are questions for future research and discussion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That'd be great to look into.
Okay,
I'm good with it.
all right.
I'm good with it too.
Well, folks, then that brings us to the end of your work this evening. And I thank you. That was actually quite a bit of stuff to get through. And you are ridiculously on time. Congratulations on that. I don't think I've had a committee do that yet. Gail, have we ever been on time before? She's shaking her head no. So anyway, thank you. So again, if you identify things moving forward that you think should be added in here, please let me know. Always you can email me. But now we can turn to public comment and input. If you had any, and the person who was our public person who had joined us, Carol Johansson, apparently is signed off. But Commissioner Webb, you're still with us. Do we have any, for the good of the order, public input?
Just, this has been one of the most productive meetings, I think, of this group, and I'm so pleased to have the new members on it. Thank you so much. This is really incredibly wonderful public service. Thank you.
I second.
And I'll third that.
I agree. It's way more fun to have some other people contribute.
So tell me, Jim, did you actually talk Pat and Tiffany to joining because you were tired of talking to yourself?
I had nothing to do with it.
I've never met Jim. I wouldn't even know who he was if I passed him on the street.
So one of these days we'll all be able to meet
You
in
know
public
what?
again.
I'm a big hillbilly. That's what I am.
Well, how about we talk about your next meeting date and time then? You have been meeting. You've been meeting on the 1, 2, 3. This is the fourth Thursday. If that still works for everybody, you have been meeting at 6. Did you want to meet any earlier? Did you want to meet at 4, for example? Because at this point, you know, it's like 7:30. Some of these meetings will go later. It could be 8 o'clock at night. I know you guys are already home, so maybe that's not as much of a problem. But did you want to meet earlier in the day and not have these go as late in the evening? And does the fourth Thursday still work for you?
The fourth Thursday works for me. Having them any earlier is somewhat of a problem. The 6 o'clock worked really well for me.
Okay. Pat and Tiffany?
I'll go along with whatever anybody wants to do.
I
Okay.
could play longer during the daylight, so 6 is better for me.
Okay. All right, so fourth Thursday, 6 p.m. Let me look real fast and see what
February 25th.
February 25th.
Yep.
And you send email invites, right?
Yes, you'll get an agenda packet. It will have your links to it. It'll have all this stuff. The agenda packet's going to come out about a week or a week and a day or so before the actual meeting to give you time to go over it.
That works for me. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. With that, February 25th, 6 p.m. Thursday. Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, I just have one thing. I did send an email earlier today on tomorrow at 11 o'clock. The board is having a work session, and one of their topics will be the resiliency project, which is part of your planning area here. So I just wanted to make you all aware that that's happening if you're interested in attending. So.
You don't need to listen to it. They took the controversial part out of it. That's my property on the main line, so nobody has anything to worry about now.
Piece of cake.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. No, and Pat and Tiffany, welcome, and it was a pleasure having you here tonight. And Jim, you know, it's always a pleasure having you here, and I'll be looking at your permit tomorrow morning.
Yeah, think development.
Ladies, for all your hard work, appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. This is going to be some work, and Jim can tell you all about it. But don't believe everything he says.
Believe everything.
Okay. So with that, staff is going to go ahead and ask you if you're ready to adjourn.
Okay, I'm ready.
Jim's ready. Pat?
Go with it.
Okay. Tiffany?
I sure am.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Good.